Hello, everybody, and welcome to KDHR Radio. My name is Joshua McKendry. This is Making the Record. Today we'll be featuring the new record from Blue Mama called 1, 2, 3, Go. We're going to go ahead and we've got a couple guests here today, but we're going to go ahead and lead off with a track. This track is called Standing by a Mountain.
Standing by a mountain, waiting for a mountain to move. It's not a leap of faith, it's something you can prove. Rock by rock and pebble by pebble, sooner or later it'll set flat level. Well, I'm standing by a mountain, waiting for a mountain to move. Everything you ever wanted can be right here in your hand. Don't say that you can't change things, 'cause I know that we can. Standing by a mountain, waiting for a mountain to move. It's not a leap of faith, it's something you can prove. Rock by rock, pebble by pebble, sooner or later it'll set flat level. Well, I'm standing by a mountain, waiting for a mountain to move. You know you should be patient, 'cause time is on your side. But off in the cold, cold distance, you know that mountain seems so high.
Standing by a mountain, standing by a mountain, you've got me standing by a mountain, standing by a mountain, standing by a mountain, standing by a mountain, standing by a mountain.
Welcome back. This is KDHR Radio. This is Making the Record. On this show, we talk about the technical aspects of record making as an art form, and we feature engineers, producers, studio musicians, and the like. That song that you just heard was Standing by a Mountain by Blue Mama. Today, we are joined by Brent Hofferber. Hi, Brent.
Hi Joshua, how you doing?
Good. And Dennis Roger Reed.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good. And so, Brent, what was your responsibility on this record? What did you do on this record?
Basically I did most of the, well, actually, I had an intern at the time. So,
Yes.
me and that intern basically did most of the recording and mixing and setting up the mics placement. You know, but it's a record label, so we have a full functioning studio.
Right, and this was recorded in your studio, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Right, and that studio, how long have you been running the studio?
I've been running the studio probably since 1983.
Right.
So what is that, about 30 years? Yeah,
About 30 years.
30 years.
And something very unique about that studio, and not that so that anyone just all of a sudden gets any funny ideas, we're not going to give an address so they show up, but there's something kind of funny about it that you don't charge people.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We pride ourselves on being the poor man's studio.
Yeah.
Basically, but I'm pretty picky about who I deal with. So no, we don't just record anybody.
Right. And then what's the reason for that? Why do you have a studio, a fully functioning studio that can obviously put out a quality record, but don't charge anything to do it? What do you get out of it?
Well, basically, I have a full-time day job, so this is more of a hobby for me. I've always been into music. I really suck at playing any instruments, so basically I took the more technological approach of the recording side of the industry,
Sure.
because I had so many friends who were into making music,
Right.
and they were very, most of them were very talented people. So, I tried what I like to say, whoring myself out to make money.
Sure.
But musicians are a special breed, and
You mean a broke breed?
Yeah, a broke breed.
Okay.
And they start to wear on you. They're acquired taste.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with most musicians, I would have to say I was a little bit, just not disgruntled, but
Right.
I
Collecting
decided
money became more of a hassle than it was worth.
Right, and I decided just to work strictly with friends and do things for free, because basically I'm addicted to music. So
Right.
it kind of saved me from having to go out and buy music and just make my own.
Right. And Dennis, what is on this particular record? What were your responsibilities?
Primarily was as producer.
Okay.
I do perform. I wrote a lot of the songs. I perform on many of the songs, but not all of them. And have either a primary role in some of the songs or a supporting role.
Now, is this the first record that you've been worked in sort of production duties, or has that been something you've been doing a long time?
No, I've doing my own recordings back into the late '80s, and either sharing production with my brother on the first couple, or doing them on my own, or and with that said, I've always had. Well, there's difficulty, executive producer, associate producer.
Sure.
I've always listened to other people and always appreciated other people's input. So, like on this record, we have executive producers as well, or whatever we call them,
Right.
because there are other individuals that, give a fresh ear to things. That's always important.
Because production's kind of a weird title, right? I mean, what does a producer do? It's a pretty nebulous concept, correct?
It can be as simple as, supposedly John Hammond Sr. would bring a newspaper, and read, or Ahmet Aragon from Atlantic Records would sleep in production. But it can be as far as finding the musicians, finding the material, playing in the band. You got your Mitchell Frooms that join the group basically, and
Right.
Become part of it for the recording. And there are producers that have remarkably noticeable style,
Sure.
Daniel Lenoir or whatever, that you, when you hear one of his records, no matter who the artist is, you can tell his style.
Right.
And so with this particular project, because I was a member of the group, it is probably a little bit different from that. But as we'll probably talk about, this project really consisted of a couple components, because we'd done some recordings that were essentially for a play.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the play didn't really take off completely, rather than lose all that production time and the songs, we did some remixing and some re-recording, and then added other songs to it to make the project that we have in hand.
Right. The first song that we heard was "Standing by a Mountain." Who wrote that song?
That's my song, and I wrote that. That was one of the nice things about the project for the play, even though it didn't really reach production, was that it put us into a different kind of mode with. Sort of deadlines in a way, where a character would change, because there's a very dynamic process. Joe Lair, who's the lead vocalist in Blue Mama and many of the songs on the recording, was writing the book with his mom at the time that we're writing these songs. So it was very organic. So one of the songs in the CD, "Without You," I actually wrote like on a Tuesday night, and the character was already dead by Wednesday afternoon. The song was gone. And as a matter of fact, with "Standing by a Mountain," we have two versions on the record. One is with my lead vocal, one with the young lady named Sonia Chevalier. And that was the character in the play.
Sure.
And that character had a change of heart, or they altered the character so that song was no longer viable for the production either.
Right.
So it was interesting to be able to put things together real rapidly. And it was also interesting to deal with the rejection because, like with Mountain, I was pissed off. I mean, that's a good song. I like, the Sonia version. We got some great players on there.
Yeah.
Change the play. But again, as Joe learned through this learning process of writing the play, is that there's different ways to compose a musical. And nowadays we would take like 50 songs by ABBA and write a story around them or whatever. But
Right.
generally speaking, in a musical, there are songs that are transition songs. I'm walking over here now. Whereas what we tried to do initially with the play was have every song stand on its own. And for the most part, I think we're pretty successful. And those then again translated to be moved into this project fairly seamlessly.
Right. The drum sound on that is really non-invasive, beautiful, kind of subtle sound. Do you remember at all, Brent, how those drums were recorded?
I believe. Were you involved in that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was when.
Did we have him in the garage?
No, he was in the room.
Okay, because the room is a much warmer sound.
Yeah.
Really, the garage came out to be a little bit disappointing. But the room, basically what we did was we had well, let me see. We had the Shure Beta 91 on the kick drum.
Uh-huh.
And then we had I believe it was a C1000 on the snare.
Okay.
And then we used some C1000s on the toms.
Okay.
That C1000, that's like one of my favorite mics. It's
And that's
good all around.
That's made by
AKG.
AKG.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems like it's just perfectly delicate in its way it sits in the song.
Right.
So you didn't use 20 mics or something on that kit.
No, I
in that
believe
case.
at that time we just used 6.
Okay.
6 mics.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sound. Do you remember what? And the vocal is you, right, Dennis? Mm-hmm. Do you remember what mic was used on the vocal for that?
The vocal, we used the it was AKG 414, but it was the brand new 414, the XL2.
Okay.
The gold one.
Mm-hmm.
And we had it in the cardio pattern.
And you use the C414 a lot, huh?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite mics.
No.
I'm an AKG guy, so
Right.
I have 2 of the 414s. I have the BULS.
Right.
And then I have the XL2.
The XL2, and you got those actually not too far apart from each other, right? I mean,
No, not
or did
too
you already
far.
have the BLUS before the project
I
started?
had the BL.
Yeah, LUS
yes.
before it started.
Yes.
And then the other one you got during the
later
recording.
on, right? Because they added some new features to that new mic, and they added a whole new pattern,
Right.
a chordioid pattern, and then they added lights, so
Right.
you could tell where you were at. And actually, you can actually switch the lights. In the future, they plan on making it so that you can switch those on the fly.
Right. Oh,
You
okay.
know?
So it's like hot swappable.
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
When you're setting up a song like that, there are very, very subtle reverbs on that track.
Uh-huh.
When you're going to mix so that track in particular, do you have specific reverbs in your? Okay, well, let's get to actually this. So, what was this recorded on? What
It was recorded on the Korg D32X XL,
okay.
or extended definition XD. I'm sorry.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's a standalone hard disk recorder.
Right.
And so are your effects and stuff inside of that unit, or are you using outboard effects?
Well, I do have some outboard effects hooked up to it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think for the most part we just use the ones that come with the machine.
Okay, and so in a track like that, did you when you start to mix it and you're starting to look at it, do you have reverbs in mind, like I'm going to use this hall or this plate, or do you start putting them up and decide what's appropriate for the song?
I do a little of each.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I did in this case, but I try to stay more towards the small rooms or maybe the small halls.
Right.
I try to stay away from the amphitheaters and the cathedrals and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I usually always bring down the actual reverb time to about between 0.9 and 1.3.
Right.
You know,
And do
'cause I
you think
don't like
that
it.
stylistically for this type of music is that something that, because you seem to have narrowed in on that thing, is that
Right.
something that's stylistic to this style?
Yeah, because I think this
music?
type of music you don't really want a lot of reverb and a lot of effect on. You want to give it kind of a natural feel because it's a heartfelt music, you know.
Right.
So I think we might have just added a little reverb to the drums, to the snare, and then maybe to the vocals. I know we did to the vocals. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, we're going to hear another track. This is from Blue Mama. This is That Ain't No Way to Lie.
Had enough of your alibi. Have
fake truths you can't deny. Here's a suggestion, that ain't no way to lie. So used to having your own way with a scotch and soda at the end of the day. Here's a suggestion, say what you gotta say. Always playing those same old games, talking trash and taking down names. I'm here to tell you that starting today, brother, that's all changed. You lie and cheat just because you can. It's hard for me to even understand. Here's a suggestion, start acting like a man. Let's cut to the chase and play our hands. But you're so far gone, you can't understand. You can't go on like yesterday. Brother, that's all changed. Too damn scared to even try. Face a man like me, eye to eye. Here's a suggestion, that ain't no way, just a suggestion. That ain't no way to my suggestion. That ain't no way to lie.
All right, we are back. That was That Ain't No Way to Lie from Blue Mama. It's the new record, 1, 2, 3, Go. So who's the guitar player on that song?
That's well, Joe Lair, who's doing the lead vocal, is playing the nylon string or gut string guitar, and the other two guitars, the Resophonic guitars, the slide and the fingerstyle. A gentleman named Mike Dowling, and Mike is a Grammy winner, only Grammy winner that I think that you had in Plastic Meltdown Studios.
Probably. Well, actually, I don't know, Foo Fighters. When I had
Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah, Taylor Hawkins. I'm
Okay,
sure
well,
he's won a Grammy.
One of a few. And I met Mike a number of years ago at a University of Washington, I think it was, at a guitar school, week-long school, and he comes up to the West Coast once a year to do the NAMM show. Usually works for National Resophonic Guitars, and then plays his L.A. stuff. Does the Boulevard Music in L.A. And so I think for 3 years running, maybe 4 years running, even, we would steal him away on a weeknight and drag him down to San Clemente and ply him with Mexican food from Aviles del Ranchito, and then throw him in the studio and throw 3 or 4 songs at him. And I think this is one that's indicative of his style, that he hears the song probably 2 or 3 times, maybe charts it out, and then he does a guitar track. And as you were mentioning a moment ago, it's almost like he's already thought out the next guitar track, and they just lay in seamlessly. And even though we're all geniuses and we do great mixing jobs, his stuff is already mixed. I mean, it's already mastered. It has the tone. So to find players like that, this is a nice song. It's a well-written song, I think, even though did I co-write it? I think I did, so maybe I shouldn't brag. But it's a good song, and Joe does a good vocal on it, and he plays a nice guitar. But really a lot of the power of the recording comes from that.
And not just that, to me, it's indicative of an era. It almost sounds like it could have been done 60, 70 years ago, but without sounding dated. It just sounds incredibly like a certain era. He really can evoke whatever it is that he's trying to do. This one sounds a bit smoother than the other tracks. Is there a reason for that, Brent, that you know of?
Yeah, there is. Actually, that was recorded on a MG1214 analog machine.
Okay.
That we transferred over when we finally went digital. What year did we go digital, would you say, Dennis?
I don't know, 2006 maybe.
You might know that, John.
Well, a little probably when we were talking about this actually not too long ago that when this record started, and we
Right.
kind of were hovering around 2004 or whatever.
Right.
Because that was when you had me come in because you'd gotten that recorder, or you gotten a hard disk recorder.
Exactly.
So is that your Akai machine?
It was recorded
the
on
tape-
the Akai
okay.
MG1214, and then we transferred it over to the Korg.
Okay.
And this whole project was kind of done on the Korg as a learning experience. I mean, we learned basically the digital realm
Right.
on this machine, but it came out pretty well for what we did.
Now it's pretty obvious that there's something different there, and hearing that and knowing
Right.
that's the digital to the tape world. It's not better or worse to me. To either of you guys, is there "Standing by a Mountain" is obviously a purely digital song,
Right.
And that one's purely analog. Is there one or the other? Is there something that jumps out at you guys that says, "I don't like that because," or
Well, like you said, I think it's smoother a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought, but I can't remember what it was. But it's definitely smoother. That's what I was going to say. The Korg has an analog compression that when you're going in with the signal, you can actually compress it in a way that gives it an analog feel.
Okay.
So I do use that quite often. And I think that's what keeps the other recordings kind of in a soft way too. But
Also, it's a type of music. I think that the numbers like this that are relatively spare instrumentation, not a lot of it's a snare, not even a hi hat. I think just a
right,
snare.
no, it's just
Right.
You're going to see the difference or hear the difference probably more readily. If it was a full band thing, I'm not so sure that it would be quite as noticeable. And a little bit of distortion here and there will erase the analog and digital quite well.
Right. And then I was going to ask about the drums. Is that stick or is that brushes? Do you know?
I think it was brushes, wasn't it? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure it
primarily.
was brushes.
There's a gentleman, Phil Hawkins, who's Blue Mama's drummer. He doesn't like that.
Yeah, he
Not
hates brushes.
He really hates using just the snare. In fact, the first few times we did, he'd bring the whole kit and then just phony play those, just the snare. But we twisted his arm on it. He did a great job. And I think in some songs he'd been using the brushes, but if it required a little more going in the chorus or something, he might turn them around and use the handle. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
For a little snap or something like that. So. And I really like that sound on the numbers that have that. And again, it sort of evokes an era. Actually, my original idea for production on this was a Dixieland band. And I thought, well, that's kind of corny, and I'm going to have to go find some guys. And I didn't have to. I found Mike Dowling. And I mean, I hear it when I hear it. I'm hearing slide trombone and trumpets and, the cornets and things.
Yeah.
Because it really, again, it kind of evokes that era. And it's a different song in that because it was the gestation came from that play. You don't normally hear, you hear love songs. This is a song where a guy's yelling at other people because they're not being honest in their dealings. And with the play, it was something to do with politicians. Stands alone outside of that. But again, a lot of the lyrical content on this CD is not, hey, I love you, or hey, I want to jump your bones, or hey, I'm so sorry we broke up. It goes into a different realm. And without being pompous and saying it's a concept album, because the heart of this came from the play, there really is a continuity that has to do with relationship and how relationships change throughout the entire project, which was not necessarily our major intention, but just sort of something that happened.
It's a byproduct of that, of it trying the original intent, huh?
Right.
It's funny that you say that about Phil not wanting to play with brushes because, as you said, there's quite a few. It seems like there's quite a few songs that are brushes, and they're brilliant. I mean, he does it. He plays it perfectly.
He does. He really does. But he just hates to do it.
It's odd because it's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
but I could see maybe it would seem boring, I guess. But at the same time, there must be some satisfaction in knowing that you drove the engine perfectly the whole way through with one stinking drum.
Right.
It's like how many, give me one string on a guitar and tell me to play a song, and I'd be in pretty bad shape.
That's exactly Phil's analogy. Why don't we make 4 strings off your guitar? So I understand, but again, it's suiting the song, and that's where you find the quality players is the individuals that suit the song. I mean, Mike Dowling could certainly play his guitar behind his head if he wanted to, and jump up and down and set his hair on fire if need be.
Sure.
But he doesn't have to, because he has something that he does, and he's refined it to this incredible degree. And I think you find that with many of the folks that are on here. We're lucky to have some guests on this. Andy Rao plays banjo in one song, and I don't know anybody that's a better five-string banjo player than Andy. And we got Probin Gregory, who's currently is touring with the Beach Boys, plays trumpet on one of the songs. It's just incredible, trumpet solo that managed to evoke jazz and the dating game at the same time and fit the song perfectly. And again, Probin could play very intricate stuff, but what he chose to play for that solo is something that suits this. He plays on a remake of a Sam the Sham song, and it just suits it suits it so perfectly. And that's what you find with these super high class players like Mike and Probin.
Yeah, I would like to say too that that's the first song that we actually sold.
Oh, really?
Some guy in Germany actually downloaded
Somebody
that song.
bought that one.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
the first one.
Now, how many? Anybody got a guess as to how many players are on this record? Anyone ever count? I mean, they're probably listed on the credits, but what's a guess as to how many different people actually play on this?
We
record?
didn't have Chris Sterl on any of this, right?
Yeah, this
No,
is
so.
well. There's 6 people in the band, and we had 2 songs with different drummers, so there's 8. And we have my brother played guitar, and Mike Dowling played guitar. We had Joshua McKendry play guitar on a couple numbers. Fiddle, Ella Schweid played violin on several numbers. We had 2 different female vocalists, 3 different
female vocalists. Yeah.
Right.
The other gentleman who came and sang in the middle of Ride the Wind.
That's right. We have Michael
Oh,
Gardner
yeah,
doing
yeah.
what we call the David Crosby vocals
Right.
on Ride the Wind. And I'm probably missing a couple people. But,
Yeah. Tim, the original band, Tim, right?
Tim Morgan. We had the 1, 2, 3 guy too.
Oh, yeah. He didn't quite make it. I'd say you were about at 15 or 16 right there, right? And we're probably leaving a couple of people off.
Could be, but again, this is an interesting project. This is Blue Mama's 3rd recording, and they share one thing in common. That's they're all like almost 70 minutes long. We don't make CDs; we make double CDs.
Right.
So truthfully, you get a lot of bang for your buck. It's like a nickel a song. No, seriously, there's a lot. If this was to translate back into the days of vinyl, you'd be looking at a double LP for sure.
Right.
Oh, yeah, 20
and
songs.
And that's what we've done for all 3 of them. Now, the first one, I think our excuse was we didn't think we'd ever make another CD, so we put everything on it. But no, it just because it was a very long project too. It could have been, if it could have been done in a different style or manner, maybe half of these would have came out or whatever.
Sure.
But it's also tough because I personally like everything on here. It'd be really hard to say, well, here's our weakest song. We'll scratch this one or we'll scratch that one. And
Right.
because we had done this in this sort of interesting manner with the play, we had 3 songs that had female vocalists, and since Blue Mama doesn't have a female vocalist, it seemed sort of unusual to put those within the body of it. So there's essentially 3 bonus tracks where we have the 3 female vocalists featured on those particular tunes. In one case, a very similar arrangement. In one case, at the time it was true, a remarkably different arrangement than we do as part of the Blue Mama band earlier on the record.
And actually, today was the first time I've ever heard the new version of it. And I was part of the recording of the original version and the mixing of it. And today, while I was listening to the whole thing, is the first time I'd heard. Now, who put together the other version of? And what song is that at the time was true?
That's although the recording was done primarily at Plastic Meltdown, there were a couple tracks that were done at Tim Horrigan's studio, and on that particular one. The musicians are Tim Horrigan on everything except for the violin, and that's Ella Schweid. So Tim did drums, bass, everything on that one. And we had performed that song live probably 3 or 4 times at various concerts, etc., and never landed quite on an exact arrangement. So although this is somewhat similar to that, it's very, again, as you know now, very remarkably different than the original arrangement. Carries some of the same flavor, obviously same melody, etc., but dramatically different production style. And,
Absolutely.
it's interesting. I haven't actively pitched these songs for covers, but I did send both of those versions to a couple of friends of mine that are work in the Nashville market and try to get things published, get songs published, etc. And it was a husband and wife team, and they fought dramatically
Over the 2 versions.
Yeah, push this one, push this one.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it seems like a simple thing to me. You push this one if it's a female artist. You push this one as a male artist.
Right. Okay, well, we're gonna play another track here. This one is called "Mary Means." This used to have a different name, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What was the original name for this track?
Hail to the New Chief.
Right, and that bit the dust because of the concept going
yeah,
away?
the concept
or?
went away.
Well, we got down to the point where we're going to get it mastered, and I never liked the title. It was a working title for the play, and Joe Lair had just gotten married, and well, that's somewhat irrelevant at this point. But anyway, I said, give me an idea for some other titles.
Yeah.
And he sent me an email with like 14 or 15 of the worst titles I've ever heard. And we should say this is instrumental, so you can kind of call it whatever you want.
Right.
But in conversation with him, he said something regarding his new wife's grandmother. His name was Mary Means. And I thought, what a great, Mary means what? Mary means nothing? Or what does Mary mean? So it worked out great for him, and I think it scored him some points at home as well. So
Cool.
I'll probably steal the title in the future and write one with lyrics because it has so many different ways it could go.
All right, so here's Mary Means from Blue Mama. We're back, KDHR Radio. This is Making the Record. My name is Joshua McKendry, and today we are listening from the newest release from Blue Mama. It's called 1, 2, 3, Go, and that song was called Mary Means. Quickly, I'll interject myself into the equation that I was a part of this record in the recording of it, and was gratefully asked to play on a couple songs. I played on that one, and what I want to lead into is the other guitar player on that one, we'll hear some other stuff from him too, is your brother, Dennis. And his name is?
That's my brother Don.
Your brother Don, and who, for me personally as a guitar player, is one of the greatest guitar players I've ever seen. And that song, which I really like, it's got this like traveling quality, like makes me want to hop on a train and just go somewhere. And a lot of that is because of the lines that he played. And myself as a player, and I mentioned this to you guys, I designed everything I played off of his lines because they were so melodically perfect. And it came out really, really nice. I love the sound of that song. Is that is that brushes or sticks on that one? Do you know, on the drums?
That was brushes again.
Brushes
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Phil's going to be listening to this, going, "Why are they playing all the songs with brushes?
We twisted
Do
his
they
arm.
hate me?"
We twisted his arm to do it. It
Yeah.
was basically, you play brushes or we get another drummer.
And Joshua, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I can make you more angry, I guess, or more challenged. That when we did the recording session on that, Don hadn't heard the tune.
Yeah.
We had him come in to do 3 or 4 other songs, and we just threw everything else in the room. So he had a mandolin and an acoustic guitar, and just put those parts in. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that might be one of the ones that was like out the door. He was leaving, like, "Come on, you got one more, one more." But now, and I think honestly, you can tell that your lines, that what you played, is so complementary, which makes part of this is a relatively dense song, especially with the distorted electric guitar. There's a lot going on there, and yet I can hear the instruments separately. I can hear the changes in gradient of the sound. And you mentioned my brother's stuff on it, and yet it's not showboaty. I mean, I think the average listener's not going to go, "Wow, jaw-dropping." But as you say, it's integral to what makes this song,
It's
makes it
harmonically
work.
perfect. It's like just everything lends itself to the complementary nature of the rest of the song.
I'd like to say I taught him everything that he knows. It's really I taught him everything I know.
Yeah, but he's way gone
Took
over
about
that
45
now.
minutes.
I would also like to say Don's another one who can just lay down tracks that are already mastered, already mixed. I mean, he's
And
Yeah.
he's really developed the thing. We're doing a project right now with Marty
Yeah.
McPhee, the harmonica player from Blue Mama. And Don came in, we did a session, was it back in June, I guess now. And he's starting to develop a very similar concept to Mike Dowling, in that many of the things that we're doing on this project, he's laid down a guitar track and then immediately laid down another one, and then maybe even another, that are all very conjoined and make for a fuller experience. So.
like thought out in a way that forms a cohesive thing. I was going to actually ask about the harmonica on that. A very subtle, nice harmonica sound on that. Brent, do you remember what you used to record harmonica on that?
I think Marty. Did we run through an amp? Do you remember, or did we do that online?
It was either line, but we
Marty
just
usually has his own amp or his own.
he
mic.
just has brought this amp back into his life. A number of years ago, Blue Mama started out primarily as a bar band, and if you lived in South Orange County in the late 1990s and early 2000s, you actually stayed on our email list so you knew where we were if you wanted to avoid us. 'Cause we were playing a lot, every chili cook-off, every bar, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I bought a Carvin all-tube guitar amp. I can't remember the name, but it's a 212, I believe, or 112. And I enjoyed it, but it's kind of heavy. I'm getting older, and I wanted something lighter. I forget. There was a reason for me to sell it to Marty, and Marty used it. It maybe this recording has an interesting. Does not have a reverb, but there's something in the tonality that has a little ringing to it. We noticed the other night when he was recording with the same amp, and it's just one of those things where he sold the amp to somebody else, and it eventually came back into his hands, same amplifier. So. Even though it is a tube amp, the distortion is very minor. It has a very nice, clear tone. And guitar amps are not always good harmonica amps. In this particular case, it seems to be. But with that said, it's been a while, and that may have been just room live.
Yeah, because I think
Right.
Marty, he brings his own. What is it? A bullet? There's one of those hard
Sure bullet ones,
Sure
yeah.
bullet.
Okay,
yeah.
so the green one, right?
I don't think it's green.
They
His
make
is-
different ones, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it. But
So
This
when,
is
when,
old, it's
when he
silver.
plays, when you record Marty, is he always? So it's not always one way or the other. So sometimes you record where he's just playing and there's a microphone in the room, and other times where he's cupping the microphone. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we either do it where he's cupping the microphone with his bullet straight into a line
Into an amplifier.
Well, a direct box.
Oh, okay.
So we go through a direct box into the board,
Uh-huh.
or we do it where he's playing into an amp, and then we mic the amp with a like a C1000.
Okay, so you never
AKG.
record the harmonica just where he's playing and there's just a microphone in the room, like 3
no.
feet in front of him or 6 feet in front
No.
of him. You ever try that before?
No, I never have, because Marty loves to play through his mic.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that's his thing. So
Right.
he feels comfortable, and that's how we get him to perform well.
And also
So-
with Blue Mama, the first 2 CDs were much more blues based, and I think because of that we're doing more distortion, more of that Chicago sound, which that's part and parcel of the ability to sustain the notes and everything. So we did more of that. This record there is more of the direct, clean microphone, and it depends on the tune. This is a tune that Marty doesn't really have a solo. He's sort of a rhythmic component of it,
Right.
and helps drive the tune along.
And
And yet when we go, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
when we go to the bridge, which is my favorite part, and he goes to that high note going to the bridge, and to me that's again part of all the components that make that a really compelling part of the song. And you mentioned about your emotion to this is you want to go somewhere with it.
Right.
You probably should have chosen a better name, based on a train or something.
But actually, Marty's bullet mic is part of his heart. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just that's the way he feels comfortable playing.
And
So
the reason I ask because it doesn't, many times, and like Dennis just mentioned, that mic and through an amp and that kind of thing is associated with a Junior Wells, with a blues sound.
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean?
right.
But that one sounds like a harmonica in a room. It really does. And like you're saying, I personally, in times that we recorded Marty, I never remember him just recording with just a microphone in front. That's why I asked.
right.
I don't remember if I was there for that session or not, but it does sound that way. That one sounds really clean, really nice, and complimentary,
Right.
whereas usually harmonicas are a little bit brash
Right.
and that kind of thing.
We call that campfire.
Campfire.
Yeah.
And without getting too long-winded, for harmonica, there's basically 2 ways to play. One straight harmonica where you're blowing into the harmonica, okay? And that's your Red River Valley, your guy in the jail cell kind of thing. For blues harmonica, you're doing something called cross harp, where if the song is in C, you're going to the 4 chord or the F for the harmonica. I think that's right anyway. And you're blowing and sucking at the same time, and so it changes things, allows you to bend notes more. So it's a very different style. Marty is proficient at both. So we have things that are very melodic like this, where he's going to be playing that more straight harp. And then we have the bluesier things. So, he's adept at both. And again, in service of the song, this would have sounded awful, I think, with the distorted harp and wailing. It doesn't suit it at all.
No, absolutely.
And another thing I find about good musicians, and Marty certainly fits into that realm, is there's time where they come to the studio and they break out their instrument and they go, "There's nothing for me to play on this." Seriously, there's not a note I could put. Or, okay, give me a track. At the end, they go, "Duh," and that's it. We see that with Tim Horrigan, our keyboard player. He's adept at coming in, Crazy Old Arms of Mine. I had kind of heard a piano and that, and people try to keep me from doing it. No, it's got enough song, got enough instruments already. And he comes in, he listens to it a couple of times, and he comes up with just a little part in the last verse as it goes into the ending of the song. And he allows him to put an arpeggio on the ending, and frankly covered the fact that we didn't have a good smooth ending note for the song.
Right.
It's not, you don't necessarily win Grammys, and you don't get on TV for playing good supportive parts. But that's what's important to the song. And without that, you've got 6 musicians playing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, Joe Lair mentioned this too, that I like best about this record is that it sounds like a band playing. And there are songs like Devil in the Darkness, several songs where the solos aren't a guy on one instrument playing from the start to the finish of that chorus. It's this sort of woven tapestry of different instruments. And, great bands like The Band were able to do that. And I'm not saying that Blue Mama is a great band, but we're in our evolution and our growing as a musical entity, we're able to do that more and more. And that's not unique, but it's to me it makes for a much more enjoyable and cohesive sound than having a loud electric guitar that's followed by the loud harmonica. We certainly do enough of that as well when
Right.
we play live. But on the recordings, it gives you that ability to have some semblance of subtlety on the softer numbers. And that's another thing I think that maybe plays to Blue Mama's strengths is It is a group with 6 members, 4 vocalists, disparate background and taste, and the ability to do a variety of different kinds of music, and sometimes even in the same song. To bring a different a different background or a different idea to a song, and that's what makes music exciting. I'm like Brent too. I'm addicted to music. In fact, it's almost a sickness. I mean, I read a lot of magazines,
is.
and they're all about music. I read a lot of books. It's all about music.
Right.
So,
and thank God for the internet, because back in the day, I mean, I wasted so much gas driving from store to store to store
Yeah.
trying to find albums.
Sure.
I mean, now you can sit at home and shop, but back in the day, I mean, I was
you were searching.
Well, crazy.
I'm glad Dennis brought up Devil in the Darkness. We're going to go ahead and hear Devil in the Darkness right now. Here we go.
Sometimes like the darkness, when it lets me have my way. Lying in the darkness, I'm dreaming of better days. Forgiveness never comes my way. I should not trust the darkness. It's full of lies and deceit. Lying in the darkness, sometimes I find relief. Waiting on forgiveness, and darkness seems complete. There's a devil in the darkness, makes me lose my way. Lying in the darkness, spreading the cold clear light of day. I sometimes like the darkness. When it lets me have my way.
All right, we're back. This is KDHR Radio. This is Making the Record. And we are featuring Blue Mama today. The record is 1, 2, 3, Go. And we are joined by Brent Hofferber and Dennis Roger Reed. That song was called Devil in the Darkness. Now, that one has a little bit similar feel to That Ain't No Way to Lie. Was that one recorded analog as well? Do you guys recall?
Yeah, started that way.
Yeah, that it was. Yep.
So let me think. I don't know if that may be all analog. That's another one. I don't know that we had any digital later.
I think the ones that we did analog on were pretty much all analog.
Yeah.
So another one was recorded on top of that. I mean, you could tell it's and there's something to the low end of it too that I really, really like.
Right.
The bass line. Now, one thing, a lot of the bass lines are very simple, and I'll throw this in there because I record. You know, obviously I was there and recorded a lot of it. The bass player, Jamie Holbrook, is
phenomenal.
Possibly the most steady bass player I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. I mean, he's a human metronome, but he just tends to stay out of the way. Like that song right there, is that Jamie on that song, you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He plays bass
It's
on
either
all
Jamie or Dennis, so yeah.
Yeah, I played bass on a couple songs. Tim played bass on a couple, but Jamie's all the rest. Jamie's, again, service to the song. You know, his real music is jazz fusion. And that's what he really enjoys, but he was with Blue Mama. This is the first recording he's done with us, but the last year or so that we were in existence as a gigging band, and just a tremendous player. I'd say on this record, one of the instrumentals, Blue Tango, he plays an incredible bass line through that. It's a kind of almost old Fleetwood Mac kind of feel. Mm-hmm. And then Be Careful What You Dream, he plays some incredible fretless on that. And there's a particular portion of that song where it goes back into the final verse where I can't even imagine it without his slide into the note.
Yeah, he's one of
It's
those
all
guys.
such subtle stuff, huh?
Yeah, he can just listen to a song and just pick it up and be right in the pocket, and like you said, just not stepping on anybody's toes. He's
Right.
But there's a gentleman that for a number of years made his living fully in the musical industry, did a lot of jingles and stuff. And then he actually, amazing to me that he had made his living in touring band, touring Europe, had been in the Dallas music scene, jam with Stevie Ray, and played with Dizzy Gillespie, blah, 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 blah. And he decides he's not a good enough musician, so he goes to college and gets his degree in music as well.
Right.
So I'd say, although Tim Horrigan in the band is a very educated musician, it's a little unusual for the rest of us, second-class hillbillies in the group, to have somebody with that kind of knowledge. And then, again, you've got somebody that's serving the song, not exploiting their talent, not popping and slapping, and, he's playing the right bass line for the song to sound its best.
And that song seems to be exactly that. Everybody stayed in their place, and it makes for a beautiful song.
Right. We even got Phil on the brushes.
You got brushes again on. You got brushes again on that song.
Phil's gonna hate you.
Well, I mean, hey, the transfer. So we talked about this a couple times. So you began these in analog on the Akai machine,
Right.
but then eventually went over. What was that process? How did you transfer the stuff from analog to the digital machine?
The Akai machine is actually, it was a problem child, but it had a lot of good features about it. And one of the things is that you could go individual line outs and just go straight into the line ins on the Korg and just transfer it over. I think I used a little bit of the analog compression. I was really a greenhorn on the Korg at that time. So, I just crossed my fingers and hoped that it all went well. But
so essentially, you just ran cable every each line out into a track onto the Korg machine and put it in record?
I had a 16 snake, a 16-track snake, and I just ran it from machine to machine straight in, nothing in between.
Wow.
And I just did a little bit of the analog compression on the Korg machine.
And was that in that process? Did you run into any problems where you were running things in too hot and you got distortion or anything like that? Was there a lot of balance issues?
No. It took me a little time to get everything adjusted right, but no, it was a very smooth procedure.
Right.
Yeah.
And why did you make that move from the analog machine to the digital machine?
Well, mostly because the Akai, it was an outdated machine. And Akai just made a really bad decision to make those tapes, a certain tape.
Yeah.
They
So
the transport should have just been a VHS, but instead they made it some specialty tape.
And what were those things? What were those tapes?
They were the same size.
They weren't like beta. I mean, they were kind of like almost like a beta tape.
almost like a beta. They were not quite a beta, not quite a VHS, but it was the same diameter tape as a VHS, but it just wasn't the same tape. The whole transport was different. So they stopped making those, and they became very hard to find.
Right.
Not to mention the machine itself, you had to demagnetize after every session. You had to clean the heads maybe 2 or 3 times during a session.
Yeah.
And not to have to do that anymore. I mean, I had nightmares about, when I went digital, I'd still have nightmares about having to demagnetize and clean heads every day. It was such a relief not have to do that anymore.
We had Mike, as I mentioned, we had Mike Dowling would stop in every January. And so it actually wasn't part of this project. It was part of another project I was working on, but it ran the same time, where Mike came over and he sat up and stuff, and I went into the control room because Brent hadn't really made himself available. And on the floor of the control room was approximately 30 feet of tape. And Brent goes, "Give me 20 minutes. Give me 20
I could
minutes."
fix any tape.
And we had nothing for him. We had basic tracks already done. We had nothing for him to do without what was on this tape.
Yeah.
So we did end up losing the intro to his song.
Yeah,
it,
we did.
It had to be cut off. But other than that, it made it, and the sweat dried on our foreheads. And I don't. But yeah, I think that was probably the worst situation where something like that, where you go, wow, you really don't want this to happen again if you can avoid it.
Yeah, and there are diehards out there that just love tape, but really not having to deal with it or worry about it. And tape is not a good storage medium. I mean, it just, everything about it to me was just.
Well, not to send us all into a bad place here, but
Right.
didn't we have a similar issue with the hard drive of the Korg?
Yeah, we did.
where tell us what happened there.
Well, I believe that had something to do with turning it off wrong. Unfortunately, the one flaw of the Korg is that you have to turn it off. You have to have a process to turn it off. It's like turning off a computer. You have to follow the process, and if it's not turned off correctly, then the hard drive crashes. And I mean, it could just be one time. I think we turned it off incorrectly maybe twice.
Right.
I remember doing it one time myself. And of course, that was what Korg expressed was the cause.
Was the problem with
Yeah.
it.
And
Now-
frankly, I didn't realize it, but that hard drive, you could pretty much just plug and play. And we sent it into the shop, and it took months to get it back. But then I found out, well, we could have just done it ourselves.
Yeah.
But Korg was a good company. They would diligently fix the machine, and unfortunately, they don't make the machine anymore. I think they've had.
Right. Now, you as an engineer, if let's say that that wasn't a problem with the Akai machine, those tapes. Let's say they say, "Hey, we're going to make these tapes for the next 50 years." Would you have stayed in analog?
I'm a modernist. I kind of like going digital. I mean, I like the way you.
You're a borderline.
store-
You're a borderline modernist because
Right.
most modern recording is done to computer.
You're
right.
right. You're right.
So, like, what was the to the initial question? I'm sorry, I'll let you answer. As far as would you have stayed in the analog world, or would you have wanted to go digital anyways?
I probably would have stayed in the analog world a little longer.
Right.
I do like the Akai machine. It had a great warm sound. The mixing board was just very sturdy and had sweepable EQs. There was a lot you could do with that. I actually got turned on to that machine from John Anderson of Yes when he stayed in San Clemente and he was doing some recordings. He needed someone to come set up his studio, and I went out and set up his. He had a Akai. It wasn't an MG1214. It was more like an MG12. Didn't have the mixing board.
Right.
But I set that up for him, and I actually did some mixes for him on some stuff he worked on with a couple singers and players that were playing at Plastic Meltdown at the time.
Right.
And so it was a good machine. It was, at its time, it was state of the art.
One of the difficulties with the Akai is that it was 212s, right? That could be synced.
Yeah, I actually had.
And there were issues with syncing. We had a couple times where you put them together and the drummer's playing along, to a click track and some pre-recorded stuff, and suddenly the sequence goes off.
Yeah.
And that can be very
Well,
frustrating.
that was another reason. That had to do with the heads getting dirty, because when you were syncing, it was very meticulous about those heads being clean for that, because it was SMPTE timecode. So for that SMPTE to be read on that one channel, that's why they call it 1214. It had 12 tracks, but 14 with the SMPTE timecode.
Right.
So that particular head had to be very clean, and once it got even the speck of dirt on it, it was over.
issues. Huh?
Yeah, and those were bad issues. I would not recommend linking two MG1214s together.
All right, well, we're going to play a song. Dennison mentioned earlier that there were several tracks that had female vocals on them that ended up not being used. This is my favorite. This was my favorite. Well, they were actually all very good, but this particular vocalist was incredible and incredible to watch take this song and make it her own. So we're going to play this one for you. This is called Twist and Spin.
Oh.
That is the intro to Twist and Spin you played.
Yeah, I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, Twist and Spin.
There you go.
You're used to coming in shooting in hot.
When you're down and feeling low, not quite sure who's friend or foe, a mournful look begins to show your unhappiness. Just remember this, my friend, the means will be justified in the end. It's okay if the truth must bend when you're righteous, and you're righteous, just and true. The stories that you read in the history books are not as genuine as they look. The pen will conquer the sword every time. Oh, the facts can be twisted, that's for sure. Also known as a politician's cure for fixing little problems most people call lies, honey. Oh, honey, a twist and spin. Oh, we're guaranteed to win. Don't let the media types get under your skin, honey. Never give in. Brush aside the sin. Always leave the room with a big fat grin. Oh, the twist and spin. Spin, Dr. Lobby groups and PR trades, the tools of the trade for the heavyweights, working together to promote your point of view. Oh, propaganda, double speaking, party lines, useful devices that are designed to keep your opponent in check and away from you. Well, I know what you're doing, a twist and spin. Oh, you're guaranteed to win. Don't let the media types get under your skin, baby. No, no, never give in. Brush aside the sin. Leave the room with a big fat grin. Oh, the twist and spin. Show me a little bit of that spin right now, baby. Baby, that's good. A little bit of flow. That's what I'm trying to tell you, baby. A twist and spin. I'll guarantee the win. Baby, please don't let those media types get on your skin. I wanna say to you, baby, never give in. Oh, brush aside the sin. Always leave the room with a big fat grin. Oh, we're gonna twist, a twist and spin, baby. Oh.
So that was an area where me knowing the song probably cost me, and from a technical perspective. So that song, the actual song Twist and Spin, didn't used to begin like that, as I recall.
Right.
So what's going on there? What's up with the beginning of that song? It seems like two different songs.
Those were actually two different songs.
Okay.
We had they were marked off on the machine as two different songs, and Barry Wood, our master, he joined them together during the mastering process. So that whole slow intro that goes into the fast part, those are two different separate entities.
What was the other song called? Do you guys recall?
Actually, I'm sorry, they were intended to be on the same song.
Oh, but it was just the tempo.
But they were
thing.
done in two separate stages,
Okay,
and they were
okay.
listed on the machine. They were actually two separate
Right.
songs, but they were joined in with the intention to join them.
Because the same thing that happened to me then. As soon as I heard it right away, I'm oh, that's the wrong song.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that's
You did
not
that
it.
at the house the other day.
Yeah,
too.
that's not good. So what's the singer on that one is
Deanie Wood.
Deanie Wood, and an incredible vocal.
Incredible.
Had you ever had her in the studio to do anything else before this?
No, unfortunately not.
And who brought her to the studio?
Was it Tim?
Yeah, Tim Horrigan was playing in a band at the time with her. And it's interesting because she has a very nice voice, obviously, but it's got a nice whiskey, cigarettes kind of thing, and that's not her voice.
Right.
So part of the interesting part of this session was getting her to sing in that style, because I mean it's again not what she would normally do, and then these are unusual lyrics. This is a song about political lobbyists and
Right.
So there was Joe Lair, really the author of the song with Tim, really had to do a lot of coaching to get her to put the phrasing so that it made sense, because I don't know that that she had at any time, I think, to really sit down and read the lyrics and understand. So this is another one of those ones where it's not an impromptu performance, but a musician coming in with a relatively limited amount of experience with that piece of music. And there's two schools of thought on this. One is practice it. It's the studio. Mm-hmm. The other is see what happens. And I'm a big see what happens person, because that's part of the recording process that I love. That you have an idea. I've got this song and it's about my dog, and it's in C and it's going to go here, and you record it and something happens and you add a different drum track and you modulate it, and by the time that the whole song is over, it's really completely maybe different than you envision, mm-hmm. and hopefully better. There's a song on the CD called, it's an old traditional blues song called "You're Gonna Need Somebody on Your Bond." Short story about that one is that Marty was working on the arrangement of this song, and I was over at his house, and he kept yelling at me for playing it too fast. I was playing the guitar, and so we practiced it at the right speed. And I said, I got to go home and I got to lock in on this. So I got my metronome down, which I don't use often enough, and it was broken. So I said, okay, that's not a good sign. Well, we'd done at the Brent Studio, we had done a country band that I play in, Country Roots, had done a demo 6 months before. And I really liked the drum tracks. And I'm not usually that way, but I really, really liked the drum tracks. So I had him just pull off the drum tracks for me. I thought, I'll write a song to him or something. So I went home and I pulled up one of those drum tracks that had been, again, on this country demo. And it was the right time signature. So I started practicing with it, and I realized this is like the greatest drum track in the world for this song. It's got a real swampy kind of voodoo-ish sound to it. Uh-huh. I mean, it's like... And the song that it was really from was like da, 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 da. I mean completely totally different. In fact, when we finished the CD and when it was released recently, I got a hold of the drummer on that track, Ray Genovese, and said, what's your address? I'll mail you a CD. And he goes, I don't remember this session. It's because you weren't there.
Well, now that's an interesting point you brought up, Dennis, because this record seems to be a very a great cross-section of those two thoughts, that you had the band, who you guys have obviously played together for years. Some of these songs you guys had played live and had worked out and spent a lot of time on, and a lot of players coming in and having never heard the songs. It's almost a half and half, right? Like your brother Don's parts, Jeannie's part, who we just mentioned, most
Chris
of Mike
Darrow.
Dowling's stuff.
Or, yeah. How do I see Chris Darrow?
Almost everybody that was not part of the band came in totally fresh to it, and they had never heard the stuff, and so you have this stuff that's really well thought out and it's perfectly formulated, and then people playing some really improvisational stuff on top of it. Really,
and we're nasty too. We lie to people sometimes to get stuff out of them. The same song on "You're Gonna Need Somebody in Your Bond." Ellis Schweid is a fiddle player, and he was in the studio actually working on, I think, something from another project. And, there was a little bit of time. He didn't have to go home just yet. We'd already paid for his dinner and I think a couple of drinks. So we threw that song at him, and he played what I think was just a brilliant solo in it. But he didn't like it. So he says, do me a favor, cut me the roughs, let me go home and, practice with it. Well, two things. Ellis doesn't practice. I knew he was going to do it. And the other one was we made an excuse. It's great solo. It's perfect to it, And, again, he could probably work something out that would have been more to his satisfaction, but especially on instrumental music. I mean, that's not my forte. It's much more yours, Joshua, than mine. So if I play a solo on a song, we laugh about this. One of the songs we're working on right now, I recorded one of the songs we're working on the current project with Marty. We recorded with Blue Mama for a Swedish compilation a number of years ago, oddly enough. And that solo that I took on the Swedish composition, I mean, I still play that solo note for note.
When Dennis learns the solo, it's
I got
note
it.
for note. Every time. He plays it live. He plays it just note for note.
Well, which is it's interesting because your brother is such an amazing on the spot player. When it comes to lead stuff but you two have very different talents. Is your brother as good a songwriter as you are? I mean, I'm sorry to ask that question like this, but you're an amazing to me. You know how I feel about you as a songwriter, and I've never heard anything your brother's written. So
no, my brother, I think there were two things. He leaned toward instrumental music. Plus, I'm almost 10 years older, and so in order to do what big brothers do and try to crush his ego at all costs. Sure. When he started to singing when he was younger, he actually has a fine singing voice, and I think we're going to get him on record on the Marty McPhee project.
Looking forward to that.
With that said, and he has written songs in instrumental bands, etc. Not much of a songwriter as far as a lot of it, but my brother lives up in Idlewild, and he now is teaching at the Idlewild Arts Institute, which is a boarding campus performance arts school, a very, very famous one. And one of the classes that he initially took had to teach was songwriting. And so the thing is you don't really have to have a catalog to do that. It's really the format of it. And I write a monthly column or a bi-monthly column for folkworks.org, which used to be a hard copy and now it's just internet only. And I nag people for a living in my day job, so I nag people in my column too. A lot of things about maybe like setting up an open mic if you're crazy enough to do it, right? Writing songs that will never get recorded, those kinds of things. And so he'd used some of that material, to help with the curriculum. Right. And then the other thing is when you're teaching songwriting, part of it is it's got these incredible kids at the school. I mean, they're just astonishing musical ability at the age of 15, 16, 17. Yeah. So, I mean, part of it is just harnessing that raw energy and talent and kind of pushing it into the box that we call, traditional pop songwriting or whatever. So I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy playing live with Don is that we complement ourselves. We complement each other pretty well that way, that he is the instrumentalist. And, he doesn't usually laugh at my solos, but there have been times when he has aped them quite succinctly. In fact, another one of the songs on the record, there's a song called Without You. And I did a mandolin solo for the intro and the solo, and we put it through a phase shifter, and Don Leslie goes, now that sounds like a Dennis Roger Reed solo. I'm not sure that was a compliment.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and play a song called Ride the Wind, and this features an incredible, a very psychedelic solo by Don. And this also, Phil, for you, this features the drummer actually using drumsticks. So here we go. This is Blue Mama. This song is Ride the Wind.
Yeah, this is Phil.
You think by now I'd know my way after all that I've been through. 'Cause I'm a man of deep conviction, a stalwart seeker of the truth. I'm gonna ride the wind, take it as far as I can, let it lead me where it will, and I'll be a better man. It's fate that draws me to this place where power and hunger sleep side by side. There's fear and pride in this race, it's time to hold on for the ride. I'm gonna ride the wind, take it as far as I can. Let it lead me where it will, and I'll be a better man. Pride and regret, all of which has now come true. Well, I've got to keep my vision clear so I can do what I must do. I'm gonna ride the wind, take it as far as I can. Let it lead me where it will, and I'll be a better man. I'm gonna ride the wind, take it as far as I can. Let it lead me where it will, and I'll be a better man. I'll be a better man. Make me a better man. I'll be a better man.
Welcome back to KDHR Radio. This is Making the Record. My name is Joshua McKendry. We are joined today by Brent Hofferber and Dennis Roger Reed. The project that we are talking about is Blue Mama. The record is 1, 2, 3, Go. That one has so that's the first one we've heard with sort of what we would call a full kit. Maybe. Where was that recorded in your studio? What part of your studio was that recorded in?
And I hate to refer back to you, but was that a garage session?
Yeah, I think that was the grueling 8 or 9 hour session.
5 songs,
Phil,
I think.
Phil ended up losing like 19 pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's one where we, as I recall, was one of the first songs we got what we thought was a great take, and he made us go back and do another one. And that I'm going to call almost ad-lib African drumming that occurs during the solo wasn't there in the first version, so he made a good call. But I don't think we didn't realize how mean we were until we reflected later that, this poor guy is beating these drums nonstop. I think we took
Yeah,
a
I
break for
remember that.
lunch, and that was about it. And
In that hot, sweaty garage. Yeah,
and this particular one, I mean, what a tremendous performance.
Well, no, it's not a bad. That's a great. So that's just a straight up garage. Treated in any way?
well, yeah, we had some partitions in there, you know, like office partitions on the walls, and on one side was some like blankets or curtains.
Right.
Remember, we divided the garage up.
Yep.
So yeah, there was carpet on the floor.
Okay.
So
So it
I
wasn't just
never-
a wide open garage.
Yeah, and it's not a terrible sound. It's just not one of my more happy. It's just not one of my favorite places to record drums.
Now it sounds great though. Do you recall?
That's where Barry Wood comes in.
Yeah, you had described your drum setup a little bit earlier, and so it would have been very similar on that one. Same
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I do 2 overheads, 2 on the toms, 1 kick, 1 snare usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Any-
for this, I'm going to get into technical stuff that I don't know anything about. No, on this one, the overheads really made a big difference because you get almost like that. I don't know. It's like a sweeping sound.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not a real delay, but it's that nanosecond between the two.
Right, and that's garage too. Yeah.
And I think for this song particularly, that's a really important component of it.
Right. And because that middle is just such a weird psychedelic thing. It sounds like there's some funny stuff going on in the middle. Is there any tricks going on there that you recall?
Well, I honestly think you mixed that song, right?
Most of it, I
Yeah.
think. But I mean, from what I think, what did we do? We reversed
You have some backwards guitar.
backwards
you were
guitar,
brilliant
and then
in that, yeah.
we reversed that weird vocal in the middle too. That's
Right.
going backwards as well. I think.
Right.
And we're pulling it in and out. This is a very, again, in my mind, I've certainly as a child of the '60s heard a lot of instrumentals that evoke the psychedelic experience. I think this is a remarkably successful attempt at that. I mean, the rushing sound, the way the focus changes, it's very much of that era, and job well done by all those that participated.
And this is the one with the weird vocals in there, right? Your
Yeah, Michael Gardner
Right.
did what we're calling the David Crosby vocals, and he was kind of. I've used Michael as a great harmony singer, great songwriter, blah blah blah. But I've used him on background vocals before, and we kind of threw him to the lions. We've got this rock song, and it's got this crazy part in the middle. And we want you to do those do wah 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 kind of things that people like David Crosby do.
Right.
And so he went in. He was kind of embarrassed, actually. I think it's because if you play that back, it's a standalone track. It's pretty odd.
Right.
And so he really had to trust us, and we.
Well, I remember we put some weird effects on there too.
Oh,
didn't we?
definitely
Yeah.
did.
Definitely.
I
some
do
noise
remember
and
that.
stuff.
But I said, "Oh, trust me. When it's over, it will not necessarily. It's a human voice, but it's not going to be something people go, "Wow, Michael Gardner was singing weird stuff there."
Right.
And again, it suits it the way Joe describes it. Although I was a co-author on this, I think it was really his melody and arrangement, and it's almost like it's like a suite, or there's movements. You have the first part, the second part, the third part,
Right.
even within the solo. So, and it has, I think, also something that I like. It's very acoustically driven. The acoustic guitar is very prominent in the mix. The drums are very prominent, acoustic stuff, and yet you have this psychedelic things in the reminiscent to me of some of the great '60s band like Traffic.
Yeah.
Maybe not like where you go, oh, that sounds exactly like them, but it's indicative of having those types of blends of instruments. And kudos to you guys, because to me, again, those instruments sound very clear and distinct. I can tell there's an acoustic guitar. I can tell this, when the bass is coming in. And it's not this blend of mud. There's a wall of sound in essence, but I guess we could say you can see the bricks in that wall. I mean, it's not a situation where it's just smacking you. It has those individual flavors. So.
And your brother does like a very Birds-esque kind of solo in there. It almost, it sounds like that kind of thing. I was going to ask, so from a production standpoint, as a producer, so do you, like you said, when Michael came in, you had that part for him. How do you direct somebody in that situation? A guy comes in, you don't have words for him.
No.
And I mean, so you're just kind of, what is it? Just
I said, this is like scatting, duida, and it's this particular part because at this point we're like a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the solo, and although this is a relatively long song, again, if we're going back to the '60s, no, it's not. It's not.
Right.
It's not 19-minute solo, so it was a way to add a little bit of change to it, but it was relying on his creativity as well. I mean, that's.
I think we went a couple times before he did the scatting. We did some other stuff there, if I'm not mistaken. And then you told him later, we want more just scatting.
Right. Not to be more, no vowels, no syllables, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Sure.
Again, to get to that kind of interesting, almost clipping portion of the bit, where you have a lot of information coming in at one time with the guitars. And now you hear the Byrds in the solo. I remember he's playing a Gibson ES-175, which is a big fat neck jazz guitar that you would never play anything like this on because he was on his way to a gig. I hear, there's a weird little Allman Brothers tribute midway.
Yeah,
there's a John Coltrane line at one point. I don't think people that play instrumental music are necessarily going, and here comes my John Coltrane line. I think it's just what comes out the fingertips. But yeah, it's a very interesting solo, and if you're familiar with a guitar, this is a wound G-string electric guitar, big jazz box. To get those string bends and everything, it's pretty Herculean. And it would have been a lot smarter to bring the appropriate instrument, but
No, as I recall, and we're not going to play it, unfortunately, but the solo that he did on the time it was true, or at the time it was true, I believe it just had some of the craziest bends in it, and he was playing that guitar, and like you say, it was a Herculean effort to bend those strings and to do what he did in the middle of that song. It was incredible.
He's unfortunately, Don has rheumatoid arthritis. And so that's kind of thing in the past. Now he has to have a set of guitars with very light strings and very, very low action. And still can pull off some of the same kind of tone to it. But, good player. Good player.
Okay, well, we're going to play one more song when we go out. Brandon, anything you wanted to say?
I'd just like to give some digs to Barry Wood. He does most of our mastering at the other room.
Okay, there you go. That's what I was about to ask. What's his studio called?
The Other Room, and I think it's www.theotherroom.com, if I'm not mistaken. Or just run The Other Room and you'll come up with Barry Wood.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say this album that we're listening to now, 1, 2, 3, Go, is downloadable for free out on my website, www.plasticmeltdown.com. So
is it Plastic Meltdown Records? Just plasticmeltdown.com.
Plasticmeltdownrecords.com, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the man.
Uh-huh.
And then just two albums that are upcoming. We've got Dennis Reed coming up with a brand new album. It's going to be called Songs About Tractors and Stuff. That's been mixed and mastered, and we're just waiting for Waverly Reed to do the graphic art. And I'd like to give kudos to Waverly because she does all the graphic art to our national releases here in my studio. Also, I've got another upcoming bunch of kids who probably are going to make it pretty big. They're called the Decadent Jews, and they're going to be putting out an album called, let's see. I don't even see the name. It's called Blues, Beat, and Blood.
Wow.
And yeah, so they're putting out an album, and look for that probably out at CD Baby.
And that's
iTunes.
recorded. They're doing that at your studio.
Actually, they're doing it. They did it in the basement studio of my Plastic Meltdown.
Oh,
so
okay,
it's
cool.
Plastic Meltdown Basement
I see.
series.
Yeah.
Actually, Mobity Mo did the mixing and recording down in the studio
Cool.
down there. So.
And Dennis, any parting words?
No, this is an enjoyable project. It was a long project. Blue Mama actually broke up in 2003. And from performing, and I think we can't remember. We think we started this project probably early or mid 2005. But there were a variety of reasons why it didn't reach fruition, but any sooner than it did. But I'm real happy with it. It's multifaceted. We tell people if you don't like the song you're listening to, kick the button and go to the next one.
It's going to be a lot different.
Yeah. Yep. And I would just like to apologize for my short-term memory. Dennis just summed it up. This was a project that was, it's taken 8 years to complete, and a lot of this stuff was recorded on analog even before that. So
Yeah.
And you did a lot of the work because I think I was painting my house at the time.
Yeah, there was some house painting going on. There was a lot of stuff that went on, and for me personally, it was a very, very it catapulted me into really being able to do this. And as you know, that I've been recording with you since I was 17 years old. And for years I asked, once I realized that I was not going to be a rock and roll star and make lots of money, had started to ask you if I could come and learn to record. And do you recall what the standard answer was?
Well, I don't know if I can repeat that on the radio.
Well, no, maybe it was bad. But the standard answer was usually that the cleaning of the tape machine. You
yeah.
were like, you know what, Josh, I would gladly do it, but you know what, the cleaning the machine is, and then so once the digital machine came into play, it's like all of a sudden I finally got my opportunity. But this
you became a responsible young man.
Yes, actually, I became.
Yes,
maybe that was it too. Maybe the reality was he didn't trust me before. But for me personally, it was truly amazing, and to be accepted by all of the players involved in this was, I mean, honestly, so encouraging. And there were moments, just a quick thing that really helped me learn quite a bit. Mr. Horrigan one time let me have it, and it's a saying that I tell my students to this day, and that is always be read. And that was a situation where we were getting sounds, and as I thought, and Tim was playing, and so it was just an input, and we're rolling through, and we get to the end, and Tim stands up, and he walks away and sits down on the couch, and I said, okay, are you ready? And he said, am I ready? I just finished.
Yeah.
And I said, Tim, sir, Mr. Horrigan, I didn't record that. He said, what? He said, Josh, always be read. And so they always record. I mean, that's one of many, many things.
You know
so
what?
For
My
me, it was
brother,
an honor.
my brother is going to just give me one of those "I told you so"s after that line. You
Oh,
You
really?
probably shouldn't have repeated that. That's my brother's philosophy too. It's like you should always be recorded.
Yeah, yeah.
Well.
So the last song we're going to go out with is a song called "Blue Tango." Anyone want to give any kind of a? This is kind of a unique song. Anyone want to give us a little a primer on this one?
Light them up.
Well, this is a tune that Joe wrote, Joe Lair, and it went through somewhat of a stylistic change in that it had kind of a Carlos Santana flavor for a while. We ended up removing all of that, and the same session that my brother was doing with the Gibson ES 175, that was one where he's literally going out the door. We had him play the slide solo in it. That changed the tenor of the song quite a bit. I think you'll agree that some of Joe's best playing and remarkable Stratocaster tone. And then I think in a real step toward making this, to me, not to Joe, and he wrote it, but to me it's a real tribute to the early Fleetwood Mac, the Peter Green Fleetwood Mac. We had Josh and McKendry put a gut string guitar solo on it at the start. And Tim helped
that
us.
is the phenomenalest part of this song. Honestly,
When we
every
did the
time I hear
mix,
it-
and when we did the mix, that was one of the things that Tim said. Let's drop out the other stuff so we can hear that gut string guitar.
that's
So it adds a nice nice feel to it. It really moves through, and then probably I think the most intriguing part to me is, and you don't pay attention maybe the first time you listen to it, is the rhythm section. The bass and drums on this are just tremendous. This is one where Jamie gets to stretch out a little bit, and Phil as well. I mean, this is, you could almost just have the bass and drums.
Would you say that this is Jamie's most active track?
On this recording, probably so. Although, again, the song "Be Careful What You Dream" is one where there's so few instrument that his bass is more available in the mix. But yeah, this is one where you get to hear some of the flavors, some of the octave jumps and stuff that he's doing. This is really tremendous, and some some very nice guitar playing. And I think it actually is technically a tango.
Plus, at the end, I like the way at the end all the three leads come back. And
Right.
they all do their little farewell kind of thing at the end there.
Yeah.
I really like that part. I'd also like to just mention that this song is the reason for naming the album 1, 2, 3, Go. But I won't get into the whole story there.
We won't get into the whole story as to why it's 1, 2, 3, Go. This is a family show.
Inside joke.
It's an inside joke and a wonderful one that I will carry with me forever.
Me too.
But okay, well, thank you guys very much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
It's quite a bit of a drive, but I think it was well worth it.
Much so, yes.
And thank you for listening. This is KDHR Radio. My name is Joshua McKendry. This is Making the Record. The band is Blue Mama. The record is 1, 2, 3, Go. As Brent mentioned, it is available on his website, but it is also available at all your normal online retail outlets. So if you like it, please go buy it. This last song is Blue Tango.